Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on building a Django app, and I walk you through what I know about building Django apps. I've been doing it for a long time, and we're going to continue on a PDF project that I started in the last stream. This is the issue that we're going to get into. Before doing that, though, I want to take a moment to thank those that support me on Patreon. You can do so as well at patreon.com/mblehman. But I want to thank Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Patrick, Eric, Fred, Philip, Shivan, Monty, and Miguel. Thank you so much for your contributions. I really appreciate it. It helps me make improvements to the stream and just feel like motivated to keep going. So let's get into the project for this evening. Last time we started on a PDF report. So if you're new to this stream, I work on this homeschool application that I've built for my family and others. You're free to ask me anything about the app, of course, or about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. But we started on this project to make some PDFs. My spouse, who's my primary customer on the app, needs an ability to do a year-end report. So all the activities that my two kids do, she needs to be able to prove to the government that, hey, we're actually educating our kids. And that is the project that I'm embarking on. So we did some initial stuff to link to the report from an index page. We put this all behind a feature flag so that even if I were to deploy today, my users would not see this feature because it's not done yet. You can see there's a bunch of stuff that we haven't even touched yet. But I want to get the bones in place, if you will, to make it possible to do what we need to do. So we got the link and we got the page that will generate it. So it's going to be a two-step process. The idealized flow that we are developing is making an assumption that we'll be able to generate all of the PDFs in process, but that's going to have a cost. It's going to take a time delay in order to do all of the actual PDF building and then put it all together into a zip archive and then deliver it to the user. And I need to be able to tell the user that this is what they're about to experience. So let's show that off to get us to where we were last time. We also did some refactoring and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's not something we need to dig into this stream. So we're going to start up the application server, and bear with me, I'm still getting used to a new keyboard thanks to patron contributions. I'm trying to improve the setup overall, but I've got a new Microsoft Sculpt keyboard and I'm not totally used to it yet. So I might be a little slower on the typing, but that's usually not the limiting factor anyway. It's usually the thinking that's the hard part. So let's go to port 5000, where the local app server is running, and let's take a look at the application. This new section is in the reports area, and I had discussed of where do we want to put this. Does this something that needs to be with each student per grade level? And my decision after thinking through it a little bit was, actually, no, this just applies to all of the students and it's at one time. So let's put a new section that separates the individual reports for the student by grade level to the overall year picture. And that's where we get to this bundle page. So we're going to use, I don't know what's a good candidate. I don't remember what has more information, but it doesn't really matter. Let's click on this oldest one. And you can see this is the page that we came up with where we ended last time. And currently, this create bundle link does nothing. It's that's where this stream ended. But we have this nice report that tells them what they're going to get, and it gives them an idea of what's going to happen. So in the flow of this process, they will click this button. It will do a form post request, and the form post will instruct the server to actually go through, collect all the information, generate the PDFs, put them into a zip, and return that as something downloadable to the user, and so that they can then view it. So that's the next part of the process. And I believe I made, let's get rid of the speed test tab, checking my internet speed before I started. I made a checklist of here are the things that I think need to be done before we can consider this feature done. So we have to create the actual creation page that will do the zip file generation. And it might be useful before we get to any PDF stuff if we can just get the basic guts of how do you make a zip archive that then you can transmit to users as a response. That's what we have to figure out as part of the post request. Actually, I guess it won't even be a post request, will it? It'll be just an involved get request. So we'll make a new view that will do this work and return a zip. It's not going to redirect a user to a new page. It'll just be a download prompt. That's the idea so far. So let's start that up, see what it's going to be. So to begin, I guess we should start probably with our URL. And so let's go to the URLs area. And we've got this new bundle section. So let's do this. Let's take the URL format's going to be the same kind of thing, I think, where it's going to take a bundle and it's going to expect a school year. That's what the hash ID is here. And then instead of ending with just a slash, we'll just say create or something along those lines. That's probably a sufficient name. And then we'll say that this will be a bundle create view, which doesn't exist. And finally, we'll give the URL create. Actually, before I do that, let's check on, I don't remember if I've been naming my views. It's been such a long while since I've made new views. I'm using underscores. So let's not do kebab case. Maybe you've never heard that before, but that's when you have the dash here. Instead, we're going to use snake case when it's using an underscore. So that's the convention that I've been using in this app. It doesn't really matter, but it's good to be consistent on some things. So my editor is immediately noticing, hey, wait a minute, you don't actually have a bundle create view. What are you doing? So let's go over to the reports area. Let's go to the views file, and let's find the bundle view, which is right here. And this one is not going to be a template view. We're going to just, I want to just derive from the straight up view class that is, or generic view or whatever it is that is available from Django. So I guess the question becomes, does this really even make sense to be a class-based view? Like what are we really getting from that? We could probably do this with a function-based view, knowing that it's going to probably call some other function anyway and generate a report. So let's do that. So let's change this to, what should we call this? Create bundle? Sure. And need a comma. It's probably short enough to fit on, yep, there we go. Short enough to fit on a single line. Although now I'm noticing the weird asymmetry here of we've got create bundle and then bundle create. Maybe it doesn't matter. So we want to create a new view here, and let's call it create bundle, and it needs to take a request object because that's what all function views take. And I won't put a type annotation on it right now. I don't think that's really going to be helpful. We're going to eventually return an HTTP response directly. We're not going to render anything. We're not calling a template, I don't think. So let's put it like so. It's going to return a string at the moment. And we need to test this all out, we need to add in HTTP response, which is found in from Django HTTP import HTTP response. Okay, so this is like the most basic view possible. You can't get any simpler than this, I think, because the request object is a required argument that goes into a function and has to return some kind of response. And you can't just return a raw string. So this is about as simple of a Django view as we can possibly produce. We don't have any access control on here yet, so this is not some model, but it gives us a starting point. And what I want to do now is then hook up the bundle create to the template that is on this bundle template. So let's go to reports, bundle, and now that we're over here, we can go to the link, and right here we have a standard link, but we're going to replace it with URL, and this is the reports app, so it's reports bundle create, and it's going to take, I guess it will ultimately take a school year ID. We're going to want to pass that in. Oops, too many quote marks. And that's going to fail because when it's resolving, the view doesn't expect, well, that's not true. It is going to fail, but not for the reasons that I was thinking. The view is expecting to pass in a PK, a primary key here. But our view function does not expect that yet. So we need to give it a primary key as an argument. And this will allow it to pass in this chunk of data, which is something that we'll use to do a lookup, just like up here, on the actual school year. So we have the school year in this view context here, and now we have the URL. I'm going to switch this to single quotes because it's easier to replace sometimes if I do that. That has our create bundle. Okay, so all that stuff's in place. I think everything should be ready to go unless I killed the server. Nope, it seems like it survived. So let's go back to our page. Oh, come on now. Getting used to the keyboard still, like I said. All right. And we'll refresh this. Now I did a refresh, and if you can look at the URL now, you can see that it says report bundles, and there's a hash ID, and then it has create. And if we click this, it should take us to a totally empty page. So even though this is blank, that was actually a successful request. It did what we asked it to do. All right, so it's probably worth pausing there. And before we get into the zip archive stuff, we need to first write a test to prove that this works. And then I want to go ahead and do the access control. And I think I also want to fetch the school year, although maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. So let's close that template. We don't need that template anymore. We're still at the view, and let's go to the reports test views file. Search for bundle. And we want something similar here. We want to have a check that does checks for unauthenticated access. And we want to do a check that tests the get results, the get page, and we also want to check that someone who's not supposed to be here can't access the page. So all of these tests are actually tests that we're going to need for our bundle create page. So let's take this stuff and duplicate it. And then we'll say bundle create view. Or I guess to be more accurate, the view name create bundle view. All right. Now the URL is bundle create, and this test is going to fail. And the reason it's going to fail is because it returned a 200 response when really it should have been returning a 302 to redirect to the login page. But the reason it didn't do that is because we don't have the login required decorator. We search for login required because I can never quite remember where that import is. Django contrib. Well, you know what? Just take the line and then go back to here. Django contrib auth decorators. And we want to add the login required decorator to the view. Everything on this site depends on a user being logged in. Well, that's almost true. There are a couple of pages that if you haven't signed up yet, you need to be able to access the page and see something. But most actions on the site require a login. So kind of universally, I have this test on essentially every view to confirm that that it's doing what I expect. Okay, so now if we try it again, we should get a success this time. And we do. That's good. The next thing I want to do is I want to log in a user, and I want to check that we get a 200 response, which we should. But I don't need to check the context. So the actual assertion, whoops, excuse me. The actual assertion is the get check 200 part. So that helper method is going to do the checking as well for 200 status code. So we can delete that assert, and the school year itself doesn't matter, but it does have to have a school year to do a proper URL lookup. So if we run this, we'll get the 200. Now the same exact scenario down here though, oops. This needs to be bundle create. It's just, I'm testing it. That's the problem with copying a test. You're testing stuff that you may have already tested and you need to be careful. So this is now the bundle create page. Still give me a 200. Yeah. Okay. So coming over here, we should be able to do the same thing. And the idea behind this is that access control is you shouldn't be able to view somebody else's school. That's not a good thing. These are not public schools in any kind of way. So a user has access to their school and nobody else's. And so we need to make sure that whoever is trying to access this page for school year, if they are not meant to come to this page, that they get rejected. So that's going to fail right now because it got a 200, but it expected to get a 404. We come down to the view itself. I'm going to copy this stuff. We don't need the context here necessarily, but we'll recycle a bit of this. And we don't need to do self.request. We've got the request object passed in. We don't need to get context data. It's not a super method. And what we're really checking for is probably abusing a bit what getObject or 404 does, but we will need it in a little bit because it will eventually use the school year. So we want to check that the PK is equal to the PK and that the user is the administrator of the school admin. Oops, I did not save, so that's still going to fail. All right, so there. Now this is kind of like our access control check. All right. We run the test again. This should now pass. So we now have our basic test. And there it is. Okay. The next step is where we're going to have to go on a bit of an adventure together because I don't actually know the next exact thing to do. I know what I want to do, and I know what packages are there to help, but I've rarely, I'm trying to think of, has there ever been a time where I have used a zip file as a response return? I'm not sure. So the first thing I know that I want is the user sorry, let me rephrase. The user's browser needs to know that it's about to get a zip file. So the response type that we have to return to the browser is actually the content type, is the name of the HTTP header. And I think we need to hint to the browser, hey, you're about to get a zip file. You're not going to get another HTTP page. Don't try and show the user a page because it's going to be some binary data that we're going to send. So we have to put in our response a content type. So let's look for the zip file content type. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. These are common MIME types. Zip, application zip. And then also we need to go and look up Django HTTP response. And if we jump down to the response object, we should be able to set, there it is, content type. So we want to set that. And I need to make sure that the parameter, because we need to assert on it later too. Where did it go? We've got the response as the content. Got the status code. All right, we might have to inspect the header, see that it matches what we expect. All right, let's try it. So what I want to do is I want to set the content type to be, oh my word, I'm still so used to my other keyboard, sorry. Application, what did it say, zip, I think? I think that's what the documentation page said. Yep, application zip is the MIME type. Let's see, HTTP header. Just make sure. I believe it should be the same as the MIME type, but I just want to confirm. Okay. I don't know why it says it could also be an octet stream. I mean, I guess that's pure like binary. I'm going to make it so it does zip until hopefully if a user complains and doesn't work right for some reason, can't imagine Chrome and Firefox not respecting zip. Okay, so we've got that. Now, we've not changed anything, like this test is still going to pass, but it's only checking for the status code. So we need a new assertion here. And I think what I want is, I need to get the response. And then we need to assert the response. The headers for response in HTTP, it's like a dictionary. So we should be able to say content type. And then we want that to equal application zip. I think that's what we want. Test still passed. So I think that means, well, now we could confirm that. Probably should, in fact. So let's comment out the actual application zip part and run the test again. We'll see it fail. It should say it's going to be like, yeah, text HTML with the UTF-8 character set. So what we're doing here is we're telling Django, hey, I know I'm about to send something that is not HTML, and you need to respond differently. And then behaviorally, well, I'll be curious actually. Let's go. We can go to the browser next and see what happens. We haven't given the zip a name yet, so I actually don't know what it's going to try and name it. You know, like if you go to a website that will let you download a zip file, they will usually like give you a name for the zip, but we haven't told it anything, so I'm not sure what it's going to do by default. So that's probably another piece that we need to set. And then we actually need to make it a zip archive, even if it has no content in it. So let's, but it'd be fun to check it out to see how it behaves. So let's go over to the browser and let's click it, see what happens. You have chosen to open nothing. Oh, that's fun. 0-byte zip archive. So we can, what happens if I hit save? What? I saved. Oh, it just like, oh, what is this? Did it give it a random name? I think it gave it a random name because it had to. Well, that's cool. Okay. So how do we tell the browser what the name should be? And then what should the name be? We have some choice here probably, but let's figure out how to tell the browser what the name should be first. I've done this before. Not with zip files, but there is a way when you have a different file type to set a name. And it's not coming to me. So I'm not sure what we're going to search for, but we'll just try. HTTP download name. What do we have to tell it? You need to append the content disposition. Whoa. Okay. Content disposition attachment. Give it a file name. That's kind of funky. Okay, let's see if Django has any guidance here. Django content disposition. Oh, it's on this page. We just didn't know what to look for. Content, well, it's supposed to be somewhere. Content disposition. Okay, I would have missed this anyway. I was going to probably return the response and then set it as like a header type, but it looks like you can add the headers there. This is an example with an Excel file, but notice the way this has to be set. It's like it's an attachment, semicolon, and it's got to include the double quotes. So there's some stuff going on here. I think for the moment, I don't want to think too hard about the file name because that's really not the important part, especially because I don't know what my customer wants. She might want, my customer being my wife, my primary person who's going to be vetting whether this feature is satisfactory, is she might want it to include the date. She might not want that at all. Maybe it'll just include the school year. I have no idea. So we're going to be dumb about it and pick a simple name, and then we can worry about other things. So let's do some stuff, I guess. So we can set content type here like this, or we can just set the headers explicitly. And since we're going to set a couple of headers, I'm kind of liking the idea. So let's set this as headers. Now, if you were only going to set the content type and that was it, then setting headers doesn't make a lot of sense. But we're going to set multiple values here. So in my opinion, it makes sense to set them with a single key. Let's add this as content type. So this should be equivalent to the thing we just had with the content type keyword. And we can check because we wrote a unit test. So let's check it and see that it's still valid. And it is. Cool. So next we want our content disposition. I'm going to include a local variable because I do feel like this is probably going to change. And I don't want to just embed it directly in this header section. So let's call this bundle zip for the moment. That seems fine. And then come into the dictionary and say content disposition. Oh my word, what a mouthful. And that was supposed to be attachment with a semicolon followed by file name, right? File name equal double quote. Oh, geez. File name equal double quote. This is where I'm going to do an F string in a moment. So we're going to do file name like that. And then we can finish it off. And we'll put F on it to turn it into an F string. So now, I don't know that I want to check the exact format. for the time being, let's just say that we'll assert that bundle.zip is in the response content disposition. It's a reasonable check. Still have a passing test. Good. I'm going to go to the browser in just a second and check that when we try and download it now, it'll say bundle.zip instead of whatever random name it gave us a moment ago. So over here, we should be able to click this again. And now we're getting bundle.zip. Cool. Still a 0 bytes archive, and that's because we gave it the empty string in the response. So we need to do an in-memory zip archive is the next thing that we need to produce. Because, all right, if I try and download this, so it's 0 bytes, so we have, like, my operating system thinks it's a zip because it has that name, but I bet if I click this, it's going to give me some kind of error like, I don't know what this is. Yeah, unable to expand bundle.zip. It is an unsupported format. So it, even though it has their name, it's really a lie right now. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. So we know that, well, you may not know, you may now know that Python has an ability to work with zip archives. So there's a, you can work with them directly, and it is the zip file module. Working with zip archives. Did you know this was built into the standard library? Pretty cool. I don't know how good the API is, but if you didn't know, let me know in the comments, and we'll chat about like other packages you might be not knowing about if you have any questions. Let's see how to work with this. So we have a zip file. It takes, you can open it as a context manager too. That's interesting. So the interesting part here is, like, we know that we need to include some files into a zip file. So can you make an empty zip archive? I'm sure you can. And just like not write anything in it. So we need to be able to provide file can be either be a path to a file or a file-like object. That's the key. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use StringIO. You may not have used this before, but if you don't want to deal with files, you just want to deal with everything in memory, there is the StringIO library, which I believe is now accessible through the IO package in Python 3. So let's do that. Let's go for Python IO. And in here, we should be able to find StringIO class. Although we might want BinaryIO. Let's read. Let's see what zip expects. And if we can't see it really clearly, we can just play with some options until it works. Okay, but let me describe, I guess, what these two classes do. The nice part about StringIO or TextIO or BinaryIO, whatever you're using, is that you can get Python's standard file kind of object, and you can work with it as if it were a file, but it's storing the data in memory in terms of like a buffer, basically. You can actually even see it here called buffered IO. So we're going to write content to it, and then we will, from that buffer, after we've assembled the zip object, we're going to pass the value to that along to the HTTP response. And so the HTTP response will then be able to stream out the actual data of the request. I want to actually look at this while I'm thinking about it. Let's take a look at HTTP response. Here we are. You can pass in contents of a page, a byte string, or a memory view. So we might want to pass in, we'll have to see what the zip file format thing expects. We might be able to test this out, kind of create something, write our own little zip file in memory, and then see if we can just create a zip file that just has some junk in it, essentially. And that will position us to like do the next thing. Like, because if you think about this as like a pipeline of things that we're going to need, we're working sort of from the user's point of view backwards. Like, what are they getting? They're getting a zip file, and then we're going to build the contents in there, and then we need to build in what are each of those reports, the actual format of that, and we're kind of working backwards to that stuff. But if you didn't have this, you wouldn't be able to have any, give them anything. So you got to start with the basics there. Okay, so we need to be able to write to a zip file. We're going to give it a file object. Let's assume for the moment that we're going to give it a what? A binary IO, I think, for the time being. We don't need to open anything because this is one that we're going to be creating into the StringIO or BinaryIO. And we need to make sure that we can actually write stuff to it. So this is where we might have some tricks up our sleeve that we have to do. Okay, so zip file write takes a file name, an arc name, and a compress type. What is all this stuff? Let's read a little bit. We're going to write the file named file name to the archive, giving it the archive name arc name. Huh. There is no official. This might not be the right one because I think it might be the right stir. This might be. Yeah, excuse me. Might be what we want. Write the string bytes. Okay, that's sounding right. To the archive. Z-info or arc name is either the file name it will be given in the archive or a zip info instance. What the heck is a zip info instance? Maybe there's like, we'll have to see with this. Like, I think when I'm doing these reports and what's going to go in here, I'm sure it's possible with a zip archive to make a multi-level directory structure, and I could do that for each student or something along those lines. I don't think I want to do that. I probably want to make something quite flat that will have just all the files be in one collection. And so I think zip info is probably helping to support those more complex scenarios, but I doubt that's what we're going to want. So we need to make sure that we call write stir on an open zip file. And okay, I'm starting to get the feel for it. Hopefully you are too. Just sometimes staring at the docs. I know it's not the most exciting thing. I'm just not riveting streaming. If you want to go watch some Overwatch or something, you're welcome to do that. Or that was people are still playing. Anyway, so we need to open it. So I want to know, the thing I want to figure out is, what does the context manager do in this context? Is it closing? Yeah. So we need to do all of our work inside of a context manager with the zip file open. So let's set this up. It's going to be multi-level to get this going, because the the binary IO, or whatever we're going to give it here, is also going to need a context manager. And yeah, so we'll try it. So to start, let's import, which one do we need first? I guess we need the IO object first. So let's import IO. And go back to where we were. And we want to put the section here. And now I'm going to put content here for now, directly in the view. When we're done, we may factor some of this code out of this stuff. You really don't want your views to have tons of logic in them because it's just not a good maintenance pattern. But as you're playing with something, it's a reasonable thing to do. Everything that's here so far is related to HTTP, which is kind of a function of a view function or class, is to focus on the HTTP. When you get down to what should be going into that HTTP related to your domain, that's where you want to think about putting your code elsewhere and calling to it from a function so that you are separating, you're creating some layer separation. You've got your HTTP stuff in one layer at the view layer, and then your domain logic goes into either models if you're doing fat model design, or utilities, or just plain old Python modules. Like it's totally reasonable in a Django app to create Python modules that are custom built for some purpose, which is probably what I'm going to do for this PDF stuff, because that just seems like where it should go. But for now, I'm not going to pay too much attention to those design aesthetics. We can clean that up afterwards. So we want to do with io.bytes.io, and I want to open this. What is the, I don't want to give it some initial bytes. How do I skip that? So I need to give it the mode for writing. I guess maybe it doesn't actually, there's nothing to close here necessarily, so it doesn't really need to be in a context manager. Maybe just IO bytes IO. So what should we call this thing? It's not really, F is a junky name. So let's call it zip file data. It's going to be the container for the zip file. So io.bytes.io. And this is where I'm getting confused. Like, I want to give it a write mode. The easiest way to create a binary stream is open with, okay, that's cool, but in memory binary streams also are available with bytes.io object. Jump to here. I guess you don't really give it a mode. It's just going to be something that you're working with, you're adding data to. It'll just be treated like a file handle. So, okay. So we'll do that. And then we need to pass this to zip file. We want to give it the zip file, and we want to give it, this is where the data is going to go, and we want to open this for writing, because we need to create this thing. So let's go back to the top, and we need to import the zip file module. Return here and go like zip file dot zip file, and it will take the zip file data, and it's going to take the write mode, and then we'll give this a name. We'll call it, well, what were the examples using? No, my zip, that's terrible. We'll just call it zip. Oh, nope, can't do that. That's a built-in function. Shoot. zip file is fine. So the module is going to be a zip file, no underscore. The local variable is going to be a zip file, whatever. Okay. Now, even doing this might be enough to get us something that is not 0 bytes, and is actually an active or an accurate and working archive. Because I think what will happen is the context manager is going to run. Even though we're not putting anything in it, when it closes, it still has to write down whatever format goes into the zip file to indicate, hey, I'm a valid zip file. And so we'll have that binary data. And I think this is where we will pass on the bytes to the HTTP response. Turn a readable and writable view over the contents of the buffer without copying them. I wonder if I can pass either the whole file or if I could pass in this get buffer. Because if remember the response documentation says that it can pass in a string, a byte string, or a memory view. And a memory view is like this kind of obscure piece of Python to most people. But it references data. There's like 0 copying. So that's what's cool about it. And I think, if I'm reading this correctly, that I don't know the type of get buffer. Maybe that's a memory view. Let's check it out. Let's go back over here, and we'll kill this for a moment. Open up Python, import IO, bytes IO equal IO bytes IO. Whoops. Bytes IO, and then let's find out what is the type on bytes IO get buffer. It's a memory view. Great. So I think that what that means is that we are going to save ourselves some copying, some needless copying. If you use the get value part, it returns all of the contents of the buffer, but it's going to copy it into like some local string or something, local bytes. So I think we get some performance advantage by using the buffer function. So let's say zip file data, and then we want to say get buffer. And we'll live with the fact that this is an unused variable at the moment. All right, so I think with any luck, we have hopefully wired up the zip file creation to build it in memory. Let's try it out and see what happens. Whoops, I killed the server, so let's start that back up. Okay, come over here, click the button. We've got bundle. Now notice here's the key difference. It's got 22 bytes in there. And that 22 bytes is probably like the zip file envelope, if you will. I don't know what it's officially called, but it's probably the basic structure that allows a zip file to be accurate. Either the magic number or whatever kind of goes into making that work. Here's where having the same name is going to be annoying, but I'll just deal with that and clean this up later. Okay, cool. So the last error that we saw was this wasn't valid. This one is at least saying it's empty. There's nothing to see here. Move along. So progress. I think the next thing that I want to do, what is the next thing I want to do? Well, let's keep stepping back. So we know we're going to need multiple reports that are written out here. So we need to have the ability to put data into the zip archive. And I think as we looked at the API of the zip file, it seemed like write stir was the correct thing. So let's try this. Let's create a file, put in that zip archive. And I'm also curious, you know how sometimes you get a zip file and you open it up and it has just like the actual contents, and then sometimes it's a directory. I'm curious if this will unzip into a directory or if it will just unzip into a singular file. So that might be something that we find out. So like if, for instance, I put 2 files in there, what's that going to do? I don't really know. So let's try it out, see how it goes. And hopefully our test at this point still works too. We haven't really changed enough to make it break. Might start going a little slower as we're actually generating real zip files, but thankfully not yet. There's not enough in there yet. Okay, so let's change this to zip file. And we want the write stir method. And I want to give it, I don't know, let's call it file1.txt. And we'll give it some binary data of hello world. Sure, why not? Close this off. I think that's even enough to see what is that doing. Is that going to give that directory, or is it going to give just the single file? Find out. Return over here, click this again. We now have 127 bytes, so the file itself must have, I don't know what it's doing there, why it would jump from 22, because think about that. We went from 22 bytes with nothing in it to then 127. So we've increased by 125 bytes when all we added to the file was hello world as the content and then a file name. So there must be extra tracking here, because if you count the bytes, I mean, each one of these is a byte roughly, right? Because we're just using ASCII. So each one of those should be 1 byte. And so you have that for the name. That's what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Am I counting that right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, 9. And then, yeah, following your games. Appreciate the chat. Yeah, I assume it's a header or footer. I think you're right. The question is like, why is it so much bigger? If the empty archive was 22 bytes, and I guess it means that the header or footer for an individual file in the archive is something like 125 bytes or thereabouts. Maybe plus or minus whatever bytes are in the actual stuff that's here. Anyway, it doesn't really matter that much. It's just kind of interesting to me. So let's save this file. And now we have, so this is now bundled 2. And if I extract it, what does it do? Okay, so it opened up file as just a top level thing here. That's interesting. Okay. So this might be one of the things where I do at least want to have a single directory. I don't want to have a user expand their stuff and just have it explode a bunch of reports like all over their downloads directory. I think that would be super annoying. So if it doesn't do a directory after we add a second file here in a second, then we're gonna have to figure out how to do that. That's like one usability thing that I really want to be in there for sure. So coming back to the code, we can then add file 2. So now we have 2 files in here. They have the same content. I guess we didn't actually check the content of the, where to go? Where did Finder go? I closed it, I guess. We didn't look at this. Okay. Hello world txt. So exactly what we wanted. That's great. Let's go back to the page. Click this again. Now we're at 232 bytes. And got bundle. This should be 3, right? All right, what happens when we do this one? Ah, good. Okay. That's a relief. I was like, I didn't see anything in the API that was clearly about here's how to add a directory. So the fact that we're going to have multiple in here, and we've got the 2 files, we've got the 11 bytes in here. It's good. Good, good, good. So I think we are on a roll. I think we are heading the direction that we need to go. Let's look at the issue and see what I had written up on it. So I think we did this page. We've created a bundle creation page. We did that, which will generate a zip file. How does that check? That box there. And it has a bunch of like junk parameters in it right now, but again, this is all gated behind a feature flag, so no users will see this if I happen to deploy it. This is a good stopping point to check the code, check that still got 100% coverage, see what we've got, and then kind of move on to the next thing. We've got some tests here that check for that you have to be logged in, that you have a real school, and then you can't access somebody else's school. There's a URL. There's the view itself, which is all good. We set the content type and disposition, so that was interesting work. And then we went to the template and connected that template to the right URL. Although I'm looking at this now, and it's clear that my editor did something funky. So let's go back to that for a second. This is why I like to check the diff. I know it's not thrilling, but it's useful to review some stuff. Especially, I'm the only one working on this project, so it's on me if stuff doesn't work right, and that looks weird. Okay. All right, so okay, cool. Now it's just the URL. So let's run coverage, make sure that this is still all going to pass, because my CI system will yell at me if I don't have 100% coverage. I think our tests cover everything though, because there's no real branching in that view. I think we're going to be good. And we're good. Okay. All of pre-commit is passing there, and then add a bundle, create view. This is for number 521, I think. Yep, 521. Cool. Now what is that? Oh, that's a cool button. You can take a bullet and you can convert it to an issue. Let's try it. Let's just poke at GitHub. This is something I've not touched. So I know this sub bullet right here is going to require multiple PDFs. So there are like subtasks within this task. And I could do that probably on a single page. I could do a nested list. But just to play with GitHub, see what it does. Let's try it out. Oh, fancy spinner. I don't even, what the heck just happened? What is the syntax for that if I look at this in the markdown? Oh, would you look at that? That's cool. Learn something new. So you can reference an issue number from a list. Pretty slick, GitHub. So if we go over to this page, yeah, I like it. And so we know we need some bullets in here. So this is a checklist item, and we needed the progress report per student, the attendance report. That's like one kind of global report. Although it might be per student, I don't remember. Resource report is like what books and stuff are used for a course. So that's a single, there's like one for the whole school year. These are all reflective of reports that I already have on the site. So I think the reason why they may not need to be called out separately is because, well, they're not really separate. And then, okay, that last one's going to be the hardest one probably, because that's not really a report that exists today. The completed task list per course per student. That one's going to be annoying. I don't know. It might be fine. Just might need a couple nested loops, but we'll see. Okie doke. I think we're ready to move on to the next bit of this, the next phase of this project. And that's where we get into the actual PDF technology. So when I talked to my spouse about this and what she wanted in the zip file, we've been just generically kind of hand waving of there's a zip file here that's going to have some stuff in it. She wants to put some PDFs in there, and the PDFs are going to be the reports. PDF was like the format that was going to be most useful to her. I asked her, like, do you want this to be in spreadsheets? And then she's like, no. It's got to be something that is easily printable so that she can take it and hand it to somebody at the government and say, like, hey, look, my kid did this stuff. So we're going to use weasyprint. Weasyprint is a package I recently I've not used it before, but I read the documentation very recently. And there's some stuff we're going to have to do here that, because I am running on Heroku, I have to make some modifications to the way that I do deploys, I think. Because if you get into the weasyprint website and look at their documentation, and I guess in summary of, all right, so you've never heard of weasyprint, what is it? Weasyprint is a way to make PDFs using HTML templates like as the basis. So think of it as like you render some HTML, you pump it through weasyprint, and it will produce a PDF from what you provide as HTML. So it's kind of a layout engine for PDF based on HTML stuff. Although I don't, it's not like a full-on browser, and when you can go to Chrome and you can print a page or something, it's not that level of fidelity, I think. So it's a little bit more narrow in scope, but that's fine. But the challenge is, if you look at the first steps, we have to do an installation, and if you get to the installation, well, there's some prerequisites here, and it depends on, well, we've got Python, that's not a problem, and there are some other packages in here that it depends upon. Ooh, that one's going to be a challenge. Pillow. Okay. So, yeah, this is where it's going to get, even just the task of getting weasyprint installed and deployed might be a little messy, because I'm deploying to Heroku. With Heroku, if you're using their Python build pack, they don't make it easier for you to just install some of these things that weasyprint is asking for. Like Pango, I believe, is a font library thing. something. It's a rendering engine, something like that. But I'm pretty sure it's not just a Python library. Like it's a, I don't even know what language it is. I assume it's written in C or something like that. And yeah, so we have to be able to install these binary packages that are just not naturally available. Now, I did a little bit of research and found that, what was it? Heroku, Wheezy. Yeah, this was my search. And I got a result of some kind of build pack that I could add to my Heroku environment in order to make this possible. So I think what I need to do, I think probably a two-step approach. I will make sure I can get it working locally. So let's try and install weasyprint just on my Mac. And then I'm looking at the time. I don't know that I'll actually be able to get it installed on Heroku tonight. But this is the path that I'm planning to go down. And I can, I guess, report back if I have some troubles on this path. But my plan is to add this Heroku build pack. I don't know if it has to be in a certain order to use, but I think I remember looking at this code. In fact, we can probably open up this person's URL here. Come on. And if we open this, it was like almost nothing, which was nice because build packs are, I don't know. I don't want to be doing a lot of stuff unless I have to, but I think it was pretty much just an apt install. Yeah. So that's a echo, and then here's the stuff that needs to go in there. So this person has already done a bunch of the investigative work to make this work for Ubuntu, which is what the Python Heroku build pack uses under the covers. So this is the thing that I'm going to try and use. And I don't know, maybe I'll fork this. I don't know, maybe this person keeps it up to date, although it hasn't been touched since May of 2020. So unfortunately, as new build packs come out, like you can see, there are version numbers embedded into these libraries. And that might mean that stuff could change in the future, and at which point, if I upgraded a build pack or upgraded to, what does Heroku call it? Stack? Something like that. You can essentially jump to a newer version of the Heroku technology stack, and typically that's like a jump in Ubuntu version support. And so it's all running on Linux under the hood, and it's like a jump from one version of Ubuntu Linux to another. So in that jump, some of these version numbers might change, at which point this build pack would break. So I'm not sure how to deal with that. Hopefully it won't be an issue for a while. So let's get weasyprint, shall we? And see if, I don't even know if my Mac has all the necessary requirements. I've installed, this particular Mac is from 2014, and from my last company, where I actually had to do a lot of PDF generation. So there's a good chance that some of these packages are just installed from Brew on here from ages ago, and I already have all the right requirements, but I don't actually know. We're going to guess and assume that it's there, and then if it's not, I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, let's, is Pango View available? Pango. Yep, there's Pango View. Pango View version 150.3. We need Pango above 144, so okay, we're good there. And we need to install weasyprint. We need to add that. So the first step to do in my process is not, we can't directly do pip install like that. I mean, I guess I could, but it's not going to help long term for the actual deployment. So we need to inform the application deployment process of where the stuff's going to go. So it's what is it we need? I need to do requirements include, and then we're going to get the latest version of weasyprint. Go to PyPI, search for weasyprint, if I could type on this printer, on this keyboard. weasyprint 54. Awesome. 54.0. Well, that's fun. weasyprint 54.0. Nope, not dash. The keys on this sculpt are like slightly shifted one direction from where my kinesis advantage is, so I'm off by like one character on a lot of these typing issues. So if you keep seeing me make a mistake, like trying to like close parentheses and I keep hitting underscore, so I'm off by whatever direction that is. I'm hitting a little to the right. Okay, so we've got weasyprint there, and then we need to do a pip compile. I want to take this command and put it in a makefile. Let's take this, because someday this computer is going to die, and I have relied on the history of this being in my browser or my bash history for a really long time. Let's put this in a makefile. Have a makefile that can kind of capture important commands, and let's put it in there. Pardon me. So let's call it pip, and then paste in that command. So now over here, instead of running that, we should be able to run make pip to compile stuff. That's just shorter anyway. If you've not used pip tools before, pretty cool tool. Gives you this pip compile command. And so you put in the packages that you care about at the top level. In this case, weasyprint is the package. And then it will generate all of the extra packages that weasyprint depends on. So if you look at here, we've got a new edition of CSS Select 2. We've got font tools, HTML5 lib. Oh, pillow. Oh, fun. That one's going to be the hard one, I think. We'll see. Again, these are things that like I'm not concerned about it for my local Mac because I've set up some of these in the past. Pillow is an image manipulation library. So it's useful for that, but it requires a bunch of binary packages that I may not have available to me in Heroku. So again, I'm kind of banking on this this build pack having all the necessary and stuff. So Cairo was for the text rendering, so was Pango, and then Pixbuff2, I don't know. We'll see. And if it's not right, apparently building a Heroku build pack is not that involved of a process. Like this person included a do nothing readme, and then a bin directory that has compile and detect. Maybe that's all you need for a build pack. And even there, Jeffrey kind of just said, nope, nothing to detect here. So there's probably something more advanced stuff you could do here, and they just said, nah, forget it. Okay. So now that we've got this. There's other oddities of my environment here where I need to do some load flags stuff for installing dependencies. We're going to install weasyprint. Really? Apparently I'm building a new Psycho PG2 while we're at it. I've not updated these packages in a while. Okay, cool. The command I think was weasyprint. And version. Info, what was the command? There it goes. weasyprint version 54. So we might be good here. I'm trying to think of how much further I want to go with this. If we start one of these things or what. Yeah, you can see all of this information is telling you, like, you got to get all this stuff here. I guess we could test this, maybe. Let's do that. Let's test this out and see if this little snippet works. Import weasyprint. And then take this line. I trust that the content of their site is just, this is just going to download. Whoops. Going to fail because I didn't actually do the import right. From weasyprint import HTML. Oh, come on, Matt. Following your games, I agree with you. I think there are some other good packages out there. I've heard good things about weasyprint in terms of like its flexibility, so that's why I'm aiming for that one. Like last stream, I talked about weasyprint and I talked about Report Lab. Honestly, I forgot about XHTML to PDF. So that's probably a good tool suggestion. Oh, bummer. Unable to get local issuer certificate. Are you kidding me? So I just compiled this. Yeah, the last stream that I did was a couple weeks ago. I try and do this every Wednesday, except when I'm running my local Python meetup. And last week I was running my local Python meetup, so this was a couple weeks ago. And I just kind of talk through my design thinking of why I'm picking one versus the other. The short version is that Report Lab has way too many features in it, and weasyprint seems to be a popular package. This URL stuff may not matter because when I'm going to be actually running this is probably a side effect of my weird environment right now. Like I think you might have seen, I said I was running with LD flags, and notice what's different. OpenSSL here. And I recently did a brew upgrade, so I'm not even sure this is the right version of OpenSSL anymore. So I probably screwed up some stuff when I installed those packages, but we don't really need OpenSSL to check this out. I'm sure we can write some other HTML content in there. I'm guessing that they just designed their homepage to work well with weasyprint. So if we do, what can we do instead? Well, maybe it doesn't matter. Let's trust that it works for the moment. So I'm trying to think of what this is going to look like when it's time for this project to do this. I think so there's instantiating HTML and CSS objects. They kind of combine these together, and they read them like as file paths, but I'm pretty sure one of these, like maybe it's this file object, one of them will let you like read it as just the data. Or here it is. Here's the string version of this. So I think what we're going to do is build an HTML template using Django templates and call the render function and pass it to this HTML string and give it a CSS thing, and then you kind of stitch it together with this write PDF thing. Excuse me. And that's how it goes. Now, there was also, I think before we get too far down here, let's check out awesome Django. Gosh, that off by one thing is really annoying. Will Vincent has put together awesome Django, but I'm not sure how much is in here. I didn't find Wheezy at all. There's a, when I searched for Wheezy on PyPI, one of those was Django weasyprint. I'm not really sure. Maybe that's useful. Let's see if we can dig into it and see what it might do for us. Could be great for all I know. So it gives you a template view. You pass it the path to your CSS file. Okay. So they're giving more info. Like this is probably doing more than we need, or actually maybe less than we need is a better way to say it. It seems like it's designed to show a single PDF, which is cool. Nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't seem to do exactly what I want. All right. Well, I think this is probably a good pause for the day. We've got weasyprint installed. It turned out to be not too much work. I will. Well, should we do the? I don't want to mess with the Heroku stuff because that could just be a big mud ball. So I think what I'll do is we'll try and get weasyprint installed and deployed over the break over this coming week, and come back and give like a progress report on how that went. This will also give me a better chance to digest how I want to use weasyprint in a way that has me fumbling less here while I'm showing you stuff, and just get a better grip on what I need to do for these reports. So I think that's going to probably be where we end for this evening. So let's refer back to our issue one last time. Happy to help out and teach you things, or at least share what I clearly I'm learning. We'll learn together on this process. So I appreciate your comments and questions. So I'm gonna finish this off after the stream. If you like the stream and you're able to help me out, you can. The easiest way to help me out is just give me a follow on here on Twitch. I also take this content and post it up on YouTube. So if there's anything you want to refer back to, you can go to youtube.com and search for my name, Matt Lehman, and I've got a channel up there that has all of my streams that I've been doing. The first ones are really brutal, so I'm continuously trying to improve the stream quality. So judge accordingly if you go back to look at the beginning. And with that, I'll bid you all good night, and I'll see you next week. Take care.